Hello, hello, hello mga ka-chika. Ito na naman si Lornang Chikadora at ngayon nandito tayo sa Stevensville, Montana. Ito ang pinakaunang lugar kung saan nanirahan ang mga white people. Dahil dito ang mga nakatira noon ay mga Native Americans. Basahin natin ang kasaysayan dito. Nakasulat. Ayan. Basahin natin. Halika. Ito mga kachika, nandito tayo sa loob ng St. Mary's Mission Church. At ito, makikita natin ang loob ng simbahan na ito. Ayan.
And of course, this was September, October when they were building, and there's no water in the river at that time of year. Not thinking about snow melt, and not knowing about snow melt in the spring, it was destroyed, the original. So they rebuilt, and even though there's excellent records on the site, we haven't been able to find anything definite on placement of the second one. It may have been just a couple feet further back. It's either fire or flood, and it isn't clear. Then the third one was built at Fort Owen, which is, you probably saw that when you came on the bypass. And when the Jesuits left, in 1850, yeah, when they left, Fort Owen took over the place, the buildings that were here. But they built the chapel over there so that it was closer to that address than this. And so the Jesuits said, now, if we're not back in 3 years, burn the chapel. Oh. But the young Indians were drinking, playing cards, running amok, and they did not want that chapel to be desecrated, so they said, burn it. Well, they didn't come back for 15 years, and so that chapel was burned to the ground. Wow. This one was built in 1866 as it sits, where it sits. And to me, that's one of the beauties of this place, is that it was built here. Nobody moved it here on a truck. It didn't come from somewhere else. It's all tied to the site. And the original church was just from the altar to the arch. And then in 1879, from the arch back was added. The choir loft, the organ. Was made by Father Valley, and most everything is wood. The candlesticks are wood, although they're painted, so they're metal, but they are wood. And the colors on the altar are the original colors. And if you look close, there's 3 shades of blue. And that comes from the fact that we had to get indigo to make the blue, and you could only get so much at a time. So they would get enough to do that panel. Then they get enough to do that one, and it's a slightly different color. And then this one's different again. But that's how they did things. It's just like my parents never charged anything. They just paid cash, and so they would get what they could get, use it, wait till they had enough to do the next one and the next one. The statue here is of St. Ignatius. He was the founder of the Jesuits. And Father Valley described his making of the statue. He said, I used a wire frame covered it in burlap. Then I used tar. He said I carved the head and the hands, and I bought shoes in the zoo. So he was a very, very funny gentleman. He was serious, but he wasn't above being lighthearted too. The baptismal font, of course, the railing we made. The pews were made by a local carpenter, and I met his granddaughter about 3 years ago. She came in the back door and said, I was here when my grandpa built these pews. It just kind of gives you some goosebumps. And the chapel closed as a Catholic church in 1891 when the Indians went north. And not too long after that, it became the Catholic Church for the Valley. And it served as a Catholic church till 1954. And then the new one was built. And there was one mass a year for sure, sometimes two in here, and that's all other than tours. No weddings, none of that stuff. And it actually is under the control of the Salish. They don't have anything else to do with the site per se, but they have the say over the chapel. And they, the third weekend in September every year, they can use the chapel, have mass for their relatives that are buried out in the cemetery. And then there's a mass on the day we open in April. And that has grown way beyond capacity with people standing outside. It's beautiful. One year the wind was blowing about 60 miles an hour, which it was just, sound was gone on the wind. It was a mess. But at Christmas time, we do minimal decorations in here. And of course, battery-operated candles. We had no fire. And then Christmas carols on the power. And that's a beautiful thing. And see it, not a lot of decoration because it wasn't what it was. But it's a very nice place.
How was it that they requested the Jesuits to come being natives?
Initially, they made 4 trips to St. Louis. And the Salish were being integrated at the time with Nez Perce and Iroquois Indians. They were already interbreeding. And the Iroquois said, we really got to get some black robes because black robes will take your prayers right to God. So they say, oh boy, let's get some black robes. All of the trips that they took back to St. Louis ended in death. The first one, the people that traveled back there were killed by Indians on their way. The second time, the young people that had gone, or a couple of young men, they died from overeating rich food that they, in St. Louis, graves and potatoes and stuff they'd never been exposed to before. And the third trip ended, I can't remember exactly what the reason, but it didn't work. And then the fourth trip, which we'll see Chief Bigface, who was one of the people who was on that fourth trip, he met up with Father D. Smith in Idaho. And Father D. Smith promised he would come out, look at the lay of the land, go back to St. Louis, convince the people who were in power that they should send black folks. 2 months after Father D. Smith came in 1841 Chief Beefface died. So his son, Chief Victor, which we'll hear more of, became the chief. And so basically the missions to bring them here cost a lot of lives. But what they found when they got here was the Nez Perce and the Iroquois and the Sedge were polite, they were kind, they weren't warlike, they were halfway there, so to speak, as far as becoming Catholics. The Stations of the Cross on the wall are not original, like they're appropriate to the time period of the check. Father Valley painted the Stations of the Cross on burlap, but they disappeared, as has the statue that he made for there. It's gone too. Statue of Mary above the altar took 5 years to get her back out of the Gonzaga University. That's where a lot of stuff went for safekeeping. And then they claimed they couldn't find Mary. Somebody found her in the back of a closet. And we got her back. So, in fact, when I did a tour a couple of years ago, and the lady said to me, she said, I used to work in a museum at Gonzaga in the Jesuit Museum. And I said, do you have our statue? She said, what did I? Didn't really think of it. She says, we might. Oh dear. So, well, let's move on back to the back and look at the original crime. It was Father DeSmith, Father Point, and Father Mangarini. And Father Mangarini was a linguist and a musician and many other talents. He translated Mass into Salish.
Wow.
Yeah, and he started a band. And I discovered through reading that every mission had an Indian boy band. Father DeSmith brought instruments from Europe, saxophone, you know, a whole bit, and band. And I said, of all the things there's no record of, that'd be one of them. And in this picture you can see that the church was whitewashed. All the whole inside was whitewashed. The altar, everything was white. And that was because the people in charge didn't want to mess with the colors. They had to go over to eastern Montana to get the yellow and the gold, and had to go get the red clay for the red color. It's just whitewash it, it's easier.